And look who's coming up.
Alrighty, we have the man that has all the answers lined up to help you out. Ask Andy here on Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily. Make sure you're using that hashtag on Twitter, on social media. Andy will be looking for it, and we will get to some of your questions here as we go into the Thursday Nighter. And God help us if it's as bad as last week's. I mean, I don't think it could possibly get any worse than last week's game as we bring in Andy McNamara, host of Ultimate Fantasy Football on Sundays, right here on our Ultimate Fantasy Sports Twitch channel. And the Commanders and the Bears tonight, all while this bizarre story about Dan Snyder having dirt on Jerry Jones and Roger Goodell, like, the one thing I'll say is the NFL is never boring. And here's just a bizarre story like this. You know what this reminds me of is Dan Snyder got called out in class and he got in trouble. Yeah. And so now he's trying to get the other kids and the teacher in trouble. Like, this is just like classroom playground stuff.
Billionaires with their toys not getting along. And there was a funny quote I heard today. It was that Dan Snyder said, well, NFL owners all hate each other. And then an anonymous owner said, no, NFL owners just hate Dan Snyder. Which seems likely. He seems like a pretty crappy dude. He just seems like pretty unlikable. You've had a whole bunch of stuff go on, and he's clutching to that. He's like, you're not taking this franchise away from me, damn it. And, yeah, he's got files and all that. Let's be honest. Jerry Jones, we already know some of the stuff or the accusations that he's been up to. Jerry's kind of borderline real-life supervillain as well, so I'm sure that wouldn't be too hard to find some dirt on old Uncle Jerry.
Yeah, like, I just think people don't use dirt on Jerry Jones because it's Jerry Jones and he's so powerful in the NFL. Like,
makes you money.
Yeah, Dan Snyder is basically doing he's going down, fighting as much as possible. Obviously, he hasn't paid attention to what's happened in the NBA where franchises were taken away. I mean, there's one good thing, one good story about the Commanders, and that's Brian Robinson Jr. coming back. Everything else has been garbage tire fire about this organization, all the way back to RG3, to the name, to even before that. It's just terrible.
Yeah, it's really bad. And the thing is, Jerry Jones makes the NFL a lot of money. You look at merchandise sales, which is a revenue share for across the league. Look at every single year, that Cowboy star sells a lot. So the other NFL owners, I don't know if they like Jerry Jones or not, but I know they like the paycheck that comes in because of his brand. I don't see too many people walking around with Commanders shirts or whatever outside of Washington, maybe even in Washington. So it's like Dan Snyder, just relax, okay? Just try not to ruin it for everybody else, I think is probably the message that the owners are saying. And this is probably just a scare tactic to say, hey, leave me alone. Yeah. I changed the name. Leave me alone now.
You know, even that first week, they had Washington State on the background of those mugs they were giving out instead of where they are in Washington. Like, they can't get anything right.
No,
so
it's terrible.
It is terrible. Okay, here's my start sits for tonight. There's not a lot of starts like last week. I did throw a couple of flex options in there, but what do you think? Would you start some of these guys that I'm sitting and sit some that I'm starting?
You know what? This is, I think, Dean, a perfect reflection of Thursday Night Football. There's a lot of sits here. There's a lot of sits. There's a lot of plea. Here's the thing. To eclipse the gong show that was last week's horrendously boring and just terrible game, you need one touchdown. One. There was 0 touchdowns last week. One for, since the forward pass became a thing, Dean, okay? There's usually been touchdowns in non-weather games. This wasn't an extreme weather game or anything.
Good point.
If I'm looking at this, you know what? I'd actually play Carson Wentz because 3 times he has gotten you over 22 fantasy points. Last week, 29 fantasy points. Now, he could very easily have a dud today. Very, very easily. Because the games he wasn't getting you over 22 fantasy points, he was getting you 8 fantasy points.
Right.
So, I want to also see the response from Carson Wentz when essentially his head coach, Ron Rivera, said that he's got a crappy quarterback.
Yeah.
Right? You see that? It's like, what's the problem? The quarterback. And he's like, oh, I didn't mean that. It's like, well, I don't
Why'd
really
you say
know
it
how
then?
else to interpret.
Yeah.
How else to interpret, So I would actually play Carson Wentz tonight, especially if you're doing like a DraftKings showdown head-to-head thing.
Sure.
And you have to pick these guys. Carson Wentz would be the guy. Brian Robinson Jr. and Antonio Gibson frightened me today and this week because of this. Brian Robinson, first great story like you said, but he was on a snap count last week. Well, we're talking about his second game back on a short week. Is that snap count still going to be there for Brian Robinson? If it's increased, by how much? Now, Logan Thomas is out with an injury. So does that share get divvied up between the other 2 tight ends? And not like Logan Thomas was getting 12 targets a game, right? You have Bates there, and Turner's the other guy. So we have to start to think, okay, Robinson or Gibson. If I had to pick one to flex, I'd probably pick Gibson just because I kind of know he's going to be there. Long-term season-wise, I think Brian Robinson they're going to give the ball to more and more. Dean, I just don't know today on a short week, game 2, after that layoff, when you already were on a snap count, if he's going to be the guy.
It's a really good point because, and in football, like Brian Robinson's going to start tonight, doesn't mean a whole lot. It's not like baseball where you're starting and then you come out, you can't go back in. Exactly. So it is a good story, but you might bring up a good point. It might be a better story as the season goes on, and he should be a guy that probably should be in your lineup. I am only starting one Bear tonight, and that would be David Montgomery. Although Justin Fields, I think, can give you some points on the ground, I still think the only start is Montgomery.
You know what's Dean, this is a real line at DraftKings Sportsbook. This is a real line. Over under 0.5 passing touchdowns for Justin Fields tonight. 0.5. He gets 1 passing touchdown, you win.
Yeah.
Like that does not give me confidence that we're going to see a barn burner this evening, right?
No.
And air it out. As soon as I saw that this run, I thought, oh man, are we going to be in for something like we saw last week? I'm with you. I don't want Justin Fields on the field there. Montgomery's the guy to play. Cole Kmet can't catch. Not his fault. He's not getting the targets. There's nothing there. Khalil Herbert as a desperation flex, I could see it. I wouldn't want to, but I could see it because he has had a consistent usage in some degree. But I'm with you. If you don't have to start him, Darnell Mooney's done nothing. St. Brown's done nothing.
Great name, though.
It's David Montgomery. That's it. Like, I don't want any of the receivers.
No, not at all.
For sure.
Not at all. Equiminius St. Brown has the best name, certainly of anybody in the NFL, but doesn't get you on the field. So it's interesting you talk about the Justin Fields prop bet. The one I saw, 169.5 passing yards. I mean, a quarterback should be able to throw for 170 yards, except there's been 3 games, I think, where he hasn't. So that's why that line. The one I would take to cover is 42.5 rushing yards. I think Justin Fields gets more than that, and he has in his last 3 games. But that 1 touchdown and 170 yards, that's not a big bar to pass, and he might not pass it.
No, I'm with you on the rushing for sure. I think he can eclipse that. It's going to be a running game. And no, the thing is, the Commander's strategy is going to try to make Justin Fields throw the football.
Right.
That's the strategy because he's not doing it well. So I think, that's going to be under. And the Bears are going to, if they're smart, are going to try to do everything possible to not have him throw the football very much. And so, I think you go under there, over on the rushing yards. Where are you at doing that 0.5 passing touchdowns? Like, that seems so ridiculous. You're like, of course there should be a passing touchdown. But there's been 3 games where he has not thrown a passing touchdown.
I would take the under. I would take the under on that one because that's how little confidence I have in that offense. It's been terrible.
Yeah. Listen, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. It's not good. I think, Wentz could have a good one tonight. These Thursday night games are always weird on short weeks. They're always weird. We see, like last week, you played that game last week on a Sunday in a normal week. I would hope, maybe it's the optimist in me, but I would hope we would see a much better ball game 9 times out of 10. So you have these weird things on short weeks. Carson Wentz, no injury designation going in, but he was dealing with a shoulder issue for most of the week. Mm-hmm. Something else to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think I have. I'll get to the injuries in a second. But let's get to some Ask Angie questions. Paul, this is a bit of a. He's got a lot of choices here. He says, any of these guys a better option than Jarvis Landry? He's got Zach Jones, the other Jones, Martin. I think what's the Jones from Jacksonville?
Zay Jones.
Oh, Zay Jones is from Jacksonville. There's two Jones from Jacksonville.
Yeah, and Marvin Jones.
Marvin Jones, that's the guy, not Martin. Aguilar, Chase Claypool, Osborne, Slayton, Peoples-Jones. Is he better off going with Landry?
Here's the thing. So that whole Saints receiver core is incredibly banged up, including Jarvis Landry. And since week 1, it's not like Jarvis has been doing much anyway. He's been getting phased out. It's been Chris Olave, who's also injured. So you have all that. If I had to pick just from that group, I'd go Zay Jones. He's been the most consistent as a number 2 to Christian Kirk. However, in my Tuesday video at AndyMC81 on Twitter, #AskAndy, fantasy or waiver wire meat on the bone, right? We're looking at what to get. Alec Pierce is still owned in less than 30% of most redraft leagues for the Colts. And the reason, Dean, is you look at trends. You don't necessarily just look at the fantasy points overall. Look at how is he trending. Well, for Alec Pierce, what we're seeing is every single week, without fail so far, every single week, the targets have increased and the receiving yards have increased. What does that tell you? It means a veteran quarterback is getting more comfortable with his rookie wide receiver. So I would see if Alec Pierce is still on that waiver wire and scoop him up instead. But if he's not, then I guess you go with Zay Jones.
Well, so here's the injuries you were talking about. Look at Thomas and Olave. Didn't practice yesterday. That's the scary thing. You're certainly watching it today, but it does bring up a good point. Keenan Allen could play on Monday, but when guys are not practicing Wednesday and Thursday, then you get really concerned, not just about if they're going to play, but are they going to be effective enough to be a starter in your lineup, or are you wasting a roster spot? Just because a guy's in the lineup doesn't mean he might only be 60%.
Absolutely. And the other tricky part is, like with the Keenan Allen situation, that's Monday night. So if you guess wrong and he's out or severely limited or gets injured in game, you're done.
Yeah.
You're out of luck. You could do maybe a last minute pivot to a Josh Palmer, but I would rather, if he's there, exactly, DeAndre Carter perhaps, but that's not exciting anybody. I would rather say plan your week around not having Keenan Allen there because he hasn't been there. Track it. We still have a couple days. Maybe it starts trending upward nicely through Saturday or something. But if this status remains the same, I wouldn't trust Keenan Allen because he hasn't been playing.
Yeah. You should do the Ruxin and go and pick up Josh Palmer so nobody else can have him. Remember, like Ruxin would take all the defenses in the league, so you can do that.
Yes.
Rob Gray says, ask Andy, Hawkinson on bye, Disley or Everett? Was able to grab Eno off waivers. My running backs aren't good. Has to start one of Hunt or Elliott. Rondé Moore is available. Pick up and start over Kurt. Thanks as always. Ask Andy.
Well, so let's start with the tight end situation. So, Hawkinson on bye. Disley is the epitome of touchdown or bust. As in, Dean, he'll get 2 catches, and if one of those catches is not a touchdown,
that's it.
You get nothing. You get like 3 points. That's too risky. Everett has at least been, especially, and we talk again, with the surrounding pieces, right? So Everett, I feel, is somebody who has been, like, the tight end spot is such a hole outside of Kelsey and Andrews, and even Waller's been banged up, that really you have to say, okay, what tight end, like you look at it, what tight end is at least a part of the offense? So you look at the Chargers again, Monday, and let's look at I just want to look at his, the targets that we were seeing. So pretty consistent. He had an outlier of 10, a bottom one of 3, averaging 5 to 6. So that's, that 5 to 6 targets. That's okay, couple touchdowns. Everett has been a part of the offense. That's what you want to see, getting more than a couple targets, and the yardage has been okay. So I think you go with Everett.
I mean, when you look at the tight end projections for this week, there's a massive drop-off after Mark Andrews. Kelsey, 14, Mark Andrews, 13.5. Then nobody else is projected to get over 10. So, listen, if you can get 10 points out of your tight end this weekend, you're going to be happy because there's only 2 guys projected to get it.
Hayden Hurst. I think he was a little nicked up, but I think he should play. Hayden Hurst, especially if T. Higgins doesn't play for the Bengals. Last couple weeks, he's popped a little bit. Now, that could go away instantly. You have 3 fantastic wide receivers in Chase, Higgins, and Boyd, and then Hurst is that other guy. But we have seen it. So if you are in a desperation play and you got a guy on bye or injured or whatever, you could go worse than Hayden Hurst. I would still have like an Everett above him, but if you're looking to stream somebody or in a pinch, Hurst has at least popped a little bit over the last couple weeks.
You know what's interesting about this tight end list here is when I throw up the top projections for quarterbacks, you look KC, Baltimore, Philly, Arizona, the Rams. And then you look at the quarterbacks. KC, Baltimore, Philly, Arizona, only the Rams aren't there. Josh Allen is the one guy that doesn't have a tight end this year, but all these quarterbacks on this list, 4 out of the 5, have a top tight end. And it's strange because tight ends are really inconsistent, but it is weird how the projections are going with tight ends, and the quarterback that is going to get the big projections usually has a tight end, at least this week.
Yeah, well, and Dallas Goedert, I know his projection is under 10, but overall he's been solid, and it's another case of where's the workload going to go in Philadelphia, undefeated Eagles, with Jalen Hurts, who runs a couple games without a passing touchdown. But he's still throwing the ball. You're still getting those fantasy points, just not getting those more valuable touchdowns. But you have A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, and Jalen Hurts likes to run. And you can hand it off to those running backs.
That's right.
But Dallas Goedert isn't the worst play either because he has been involved in that offense and does have a comfort level with the quarterback, Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, and Jalen Hurts, like you said, likes to run. And a lot of times when you're scrambling, you're looking for the biggest target. And that's going to be the tight end.
Move the chains.
Yeah, exactly. It's bye weeks. This is when I think fantasy really starts because it's like after Labor Day in the CFL because now depth comes into it. And we'll see, do you have your quarterback? Do you have an extra running back? Do you have those guys? This is what separates fantasy, in my opinion. The stretch here, you can start off 6-0 and then fall apart during bye weeks because you don't have depth.
That's right. You could be the fantasy version of the Arizona Cardinals team, right? Every year. Except the Arizona Cardinals forgot to get good at the start of the season. They just started bad. They started in their November form and forgot to get good. So this week, Lions, Titans, Raiders, Texans off. Even like the Texans, Dameon Pierce has been popping.
That's right.
You don't have Pierce. The Raiders, Devontae Adams, though. Oh,
Josh Jacobs off too, yeah.
Yeah, Darren Waller even though he's been banged up. Titans, of course, Derrick Henry. And the Lions have been surprisingly fantasy superstars.
Yeah.
No Amon-Ra St. Brown, no DeAndre Swift, no Jamal Williams who stepped up, no TJ Hawkinson. There's a lot of pieces missing.
Indeed. Be an interesting one. You'll have Ultimate Fantasy Football, 11 a.m. on Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern on Sunday, and everybody can make sure, especially with those bye weeks, that they know who is in and who is out, and they can join you right here on Twitch.
There you go, brother. That's it. Yeah, it's going to be a fun week of games. I'm just looking at like Bills, Chiefs, 4:25 Eastern prime. Rematch of that playoff classic. Eagles, Cowboys. David Cooper Rush, can he stay undefeated with Dak Prescott knocking on the door? Still that grip issue with the thumb against the Eagles. And, Broncos, Chargers, interdivision game. I'm interested in this one, not necessarily from what we were hoping would have been a shootout factor at the start of the season, but how Russell Wilson responds after getting that shoulder procedure and just really having one of the worst games of his career. So it's going to be a great week.
Indeed, man. We'll catch up with you Sunday morning. We'll be watching right here on Twitch. Thanks, my man.
All right, buddy. Talk to you later.
You bet. There's Andy McNamara. Ask Andy. Use that hashtag on social media. He will find you. And Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, he will be right here on Twitch to answer your fantasy questions.